What are some of the ways that Brian Flores might utilize his defense this year? It was Bengal Hawk in 2023, the NASCAR package in 2024, but what could be that next thing in 2025? We're going to kind of explore some potential ideas. Luke Braun, good friend of mine from Locked On Vikings, is joining the show later tonight, and we're going to have a little bit of fun. Post 4th of July, we're less than 2 weeks away from rookies and quarterbacks reporting to training camp. Let's have some fun. Welcome to the Real Forness Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Real Forno Show, sponsored by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. My name is Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top of the corner, he is producer Dave. We're going to have a little bit of an interesting show tonight because one thing that's really interesting about this Minnesota Vikings team is there's a lot of things that we know and there's a lot of things that we don't know. One of the things that we don't know is how Brian Flores might try to utilize his defense this year. Every year, there always seems to be a little bit of a change. And sometimes that little change can end up being massive. It could end up being the thing that ends up vaulting the Vikings to 14 wins like last year. The NASCAR package was a big driving force to being able to elevate, and trying to figure out this year what that change is going to be is a really interesting one, and trying to figure out how this team is going to maximize what they have is also really interesting, and trying to answer that question is a very interesting one. So we're going to try and parse some of that out today. We're going to talk some big picture stuff with Brian Flores and the Vikings. We're going to talk about, hey, how does scheme end up mattering for this team? We're going to talk all of that. But before we kind of dive in head first, Dave, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's a Monday.
Oh, I know. I know the feeling. It is a Monday. It is going to be an interesting one. I'm excited. I'm excited that we're finally getting closer. Oh my goodness.
You aren't the only one. And the team put out a tweet today showing 9 Mondays away.
Oh, 9 Mondays.
Of course, with the image of J.J. McCarthy on there. 9 Mondays until the Bears go 0-1.
I hope so. I hope that's the case. We're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna have those conversations, and we are going to do a lot of interesting things tonight. And Luke will be in here shortly to kind of talk through some of that stuff with us. But I think one of the interesting things about where this team is going to be how things are different. And we've talked about J.J. McCarthy. There's really nothing new to talk about J.J. McCarthy. We tried last week to have a little bit of a different angle. Who are the more important players to J.J. McCarthy? But this year, haven't really been able to, at this point, there really is nothing new to talk about. When Luke gets in, he'll probably promote his Patreon, where he did break down mini camp reps and how things are different from a mechanical standpoint. That's about all there is new. We haven't talked about that because I didn't break down mini camp reps. Luke is a special kind of sicko, and that is why we are friends, because he's got the bandwidth that I don't in that sense. So that's one of the ways we can complement each other. But Dave, before we kind of get going, and Luke is going to be here any minute, I want to ask you what your kind of thought process is here. How do you think the Vikings are going to kind of unleash some new elements here this year?
Well, like Forlone says, what scheme are you going to use, Flores, or what formation? He goes, it depends who we're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and investigated who we're playing today, as in what schemes they run. And it's a variety of schemes. Absolutely huge. From there's a team that uses the spread. There's a whole bunch of what is it? The Niners used for forever.
West Coast
variants. There's all different varieties, and how he would go about stopping those schemes and the key players on those teams. And most of it came up with the generic stop the run early, which is how he's always been. Stop the run early. That way you can blitz heavy on passing downs to disrupt, especially young quarterbacks. And he will probably do that again this year. It's almost a duh type of philosophy. Now, he does use run blitzes to stop the run. Now, I'm going to be interested to see is Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, how their run stopping abilities are utilized, because we've heard both these guys that they were just, told to rush the passer. We know they can rush the passer, but how much are they going to be used to stop the run? How is Flores going to use defensive line rotation? Two guys we know are good at stopping the run. It's going to be an interesting question. And how is he going to not put people in the box, but get leverage inside the box? That's more important. How are they going to utilize that? Is it going to be having multiple defensive ends, either in a NASCAR or in a tight package on the field? And by defensive ends, I should edge rushers there. Or is he going to go a different brand new route this season?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that too. We talked about it. I think Hargrave is going to be more of a rotational guy. That's my read on it. Hey, there he is. Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings. How's it feel to be back in the land of 10,000 lakes?
Always good. I saw a very dear friend of mine and his new baby. Spent a little time at the Minnesota Zoo. That's why I'm late. We're doing good.
Do we know that dear friend?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, friend from high school.
Gotcha. Has your nemesis found you yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Hopefully when he does, Tyler will be there to defend me.
Okay. Gotcha.
Don't break us up.
I am actually
the height of both of us.
I am actually going to be taking him to you. So that's
that's true. You're going to deliver him to me.
No, I'm glad you can join, because I think there really isn't a whole lot to talk about right now. It's after the 4th of July. Training camp hasn't happened yet, but there was one thing that really piqued my interest, and I was trying to kind of parse out some of the different kinks or wrenches that Brian Flores might throw in this defense. And there's one that stands out to me that I think he's going to try to utilize. And I think it's going to be very similar to the NASCAR package, but it's not. I think he's going to try and do like a 5-man front, all edge rushers and linebackers. And instead of necessarily, like, not to say that you're not going to utilize Allen and Hargrave, I think you're going to, but a variant being you line up Van Ginkel, Grenard, Turner, Pace, and Cashman all on the line. And it's kind of what he was trying to do in Miami with the Amoeba defense. Who's going to drop and who's going to come? All of them can do everything. So what are you going to do? And I think that might be the next evolution of the NASCAR package, where, you're going to utilize these defensive tackles and you're going to want to try and get that interior pressure. But how are you going to continue to grow and branch off from what you've already done? It was Bengal Hawk, then NASCAR. And now I think it could be something like this, where he's really trying to take that fluidity and versatility to the next level.
So structurally, there is a word for that front that has, so like in old Belichick defenses, the structure of this would be that we have our Mac odd front, our 5-man, or our 3-4 under, 3-4 over, which are both similar, 5-man surfaces, and kick a tackle over here or over there, but it's roughly the same thing. And the idea was always, at least in the Patriots, and in the Patriots in the years when Flores was there, it was always everybody knows exactly what to do from every position, which allows everything to be a wrinkle. So the play structure, the words that are actually used will be the same, whether it's 1st and 10 and we're in our base package and it's Hargrave and Phillips and Allen in the middle and, 2 normal edge rushers. And it's that thing that you would make the same play call. You would do it out of a different personnel and anyone can be there. So you can make that out of a personnel that is a full on 3rd down personnel, a fast personnel, a NASCAR package, a true 5-0 personnel, a penny, whatever you want. You could do that. And so if it were like some kind of 3rd down personnel package that has, no Phillips on the field, no Allen on the field, no Hargrave on the field, whole bunch more speed, Tyrion Ingram, Dawkins, all those guys. Essentially, the way I understand it structurally that they'll teach it is when we do this play call, this front out of this personnel, you're there, you're there, you're there, you're here. And it allows you to essentially customize this on the fly and just draw stuff up in the sand if you want, because you have basically in your terminology the ability to adjust anyone's specific instruction. It's almost like the defensive version of like going on to Madden and making a whole playbook out of hot routes, which like the pro Madden players do, because there's so much customization to it.
Yeah, I kind of want to dive into that aspect a little more. So when you're kind of in the Belichick defense, when you're kind of structuring this stuff and it's almost like customizable on the fly, how different is that from what the Vikings have kind of already been doing, where they're customizing a lot of stuff on the fly, as especially like I think it was the Stephon Gilmore interception against the Jets. He had to completely shift his responsibilities, and that's how he ended up making that play. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Like
I thought that might have been the Van Ginkel one.
Maybe it was the Van Ginkel
I think the Gilmore one, he just felt it because he was just in man, I think, in that one. I think he was either in quarters or third. I think it was just like a super like straight up thing, and he just was a vet and felt that ball was going to try to back shoulder, so he made a play. But I don't know. I think I'm not any more sure than you are. I think, again, it's like, it's the same basic structure. Like the framework is the same, and it always will be. It's what you do within that framework that comes out and it looks different, but the actual like innards of the system, call it, the code of the program is the same. And you're just putting different inputs into that program, and that allows you to do all kinds of spicy things that you maybe wouldn't have done before. I think that maybe that allows you to send guys from depth a little bit more often. I think that if they haven't lied to us and Dallas Turner is, going to have a starting role, I think that there is a world where when you're giving Jonathan Grenard a breather, you could back both those guys off into hook zones, kill any slant flat nonsense they want to do, kill a whole bunch of the stuff that the Lions really got you on. I actually think that could be really useful. And then send your interior 3 guys. And because you've lined it up that way, they can't double team all 3 of them if you go out of like a basic front. Because the tackles will have to at least respect the edges first, right? So if you give them one step, you can kind of get the tackles out of there, get a bunch of one-on-ones on the inside. That's where Javon Hargrave starts to cook.
And I think that's an interesting point. Like lining up in base packages could really end up messing with people, and that's where kind of my brain has gone with the 3 edge rushers, 2 linebackers kind of thing, where all of these guys, and I think Ingram Dawkins is a great shout because he does have some of that versatility where he can kick all the way out to like a wide 9, but you can have him be like a little bit of a bully on the interior on those pass rushing downs. When like how much of this is going to be, and I'm kind of talking this out as I go because it's kind of how I wanted to approach this because, well, you're very smart. We
figured it out together. We figured it out together.
That's the whole point. We're trying to take a guess of what the the crazy man Brian Flores is going to cook up, and we have no idea. Nobody
Yeah.
thought he would take a Pat Narduzzi defense and make it into one of the better units in the NFL.
Right. Until it kind of makes sense. It's like, whoa, wait, they were like in the same building. He would have been like chilling with those coaches all the time. Oh yeah, he would take ideas.
Absolutely. So I'm curious when, like, if some of it will be just using guys like Van Ginkel and Turner and using them in more of a traditional off-ball kind of role and using them more consistently in that way to try and create those advantageous matchups. Because I revert back to Bengal Hawk in 23, where it was great for a while, but then everybody figured out, okay,
yeah, you found the soft spots and you go. I mean, anything that's based on zone is going to have that. No matter what you do, no matter who you put where, anything that's based off zone is going to have some soft spot. So you have to have enough of a variety where people can't come up with a game plan that targets a specific area of the field, which is the problem in 23. When they were blitzing, they didn't have enough variety in the coverages behind that. And therefore, you could walk into a game saying, we're going to throw the ball to the flats a bunch today, and eventually one of them is going to break open, and they always did. And I think last year, it was a little bit the same. It's just that the hole moved. The hole became, middle of the field, almost Ed Donatel-ish. It was just Ed Donatel, but with blitzes, which is better, but still, you had all of like the Lions could still hit you over the top with stuff. The Rams could still hit you over the top with stuff if you get the ball out quick enough and run the route quick enough, which those teams both have the tools to do that. So my thing has always been, you have to be able to, at some point, man up. You have to be able to just man guys up and cover one it. Even if you're cover one, no help over the top or anything like that, or cover zeroing it or whatever, you need to play a man coverage that isn't, 7 yards off man, just jump the short stuff like they do right now. That isn't like a full all in. You need to be able to guys just need to hold up for 2 or 3 seconds in man coverage. It's time to be adults, I don't know if this is the group that does that, but this is the thing that the Vikings have never had in the whole Kevin O'Connell era. Go back to Ed Donatel as well. Patrick Peterson played an okay year, but you weren't asking him to man up on Amon-Ra St. Brown or whoever. Like, someone just needs to be able to like hold on that, and just like, you don't need to hold for 5 seconds, just 3, but you need to be able to do that. With the off ball thing, I don't see really why you would do that. I mean, they experimented with it when guys were hurt. Like when Ivan Pace was hurt, they experimented with that. I don't think it went very well because they eventually did go back to just having Josh Metellus do that job and having the edge rushers be the edge rushers. Like Dallas Turner made some really sick plays in coverage, but it is a way different world starting from hand in the dirt and getting to a hook zone and having those tools available to you where you can sort of give a jab step. You're kind of coming from a place that the quarterback doesn't expect, and you can make plays. Like the interception against Seattle was kind of like that. It's a different set of pros and cons versus when you're lined up just straight off the ball. You have to start taking like read steps, and you have to do like, it's just a different footwear, a totally different game. I don't really see why you would put Dallas Turner there unless you just think he's so cooked as an edge rusher it's a last ditch effort. But that's something you do, year 4 of the contract when you're about to cut him, not year 2 after he had a reasonable rookie year.
And I guess my argument isn't necessarily doing that 24/7. I'm trying to think of
and you'll screw around, sure, yeah. I mean, you'll have Theo Jackson play off ball linebacker sometimes, just because that's how the formation will just put him in the box because somebody lines up tight. Like that, just stuff like that will just sort of naturally get weird and happen for you, which is nice because it presents weird looks to the quarterback, and anytime you can do something confusing for a quarterback, that helps.
Yeah, and
now I got a question. You talk about going a lot of man up, and I agree that should be the way to go. But does it also depend on the opposing quarterback? Is he trying to deceive that quarterback, and does zone, playing some sort of zone or mix thereof, achieve that end goal?
Probably has more to do with the receivers to me. If you have a team, so the Vikings see a lot of zone because nobody can man up on the Vikings. So the Vikings see a ton of, split safety, too high. Like everybody wants to play zone, play them safe. With the quarterback, you're definitely, there is something to that, to like, especially with young quarterbacks. So when they see, I think they'll do this to Caleb Williams again until he kind of proves that he can beat it. I think they'll do this to Jordan Love till he proves that he can really, consistently beat it before things get super like soft at the end of a game. But I think the Mac Jones defensive game is the best example of this, the Jaguars game last year, where you do all that stuff, you confuse the absolute heck out of somebody, and you can absolutely get them. But you can't do that against Jared Goff or Joe Burrow. You're not going to line up and zone Joe. If you just line up and play zone against Joe Burrow and try to blitz him, he will hunt you down. He'll hang 50 on you. You have to be able to take away his options and force his hand, not just throw a bunch of confusion at him and expect him to make a mistake. It works way better against bad quarterbacks and kind of ensures that you're going to get what you need to get out of the bad quarterback to win that game. But it is not, I don't think, as effective a way to take down a quarterback that's like good enough to beat you on his own.
That was my basic point, that he's going to mix it up depending on who the opponent is and who, rather than playing man defense the whole season, he's going to spread it around. And that's going to put things on tape.
You need to be able to. Right now, he can't go to man defense, so he has to live in zone, whether it's appropriate or not. Right. And my big concern, the big thing I've been talking about on Locked On Vikings is that have they built this cornerback room such that you can do that? And they've got they've got Byron Murphy and a bunch of players that have not started a season, and Jeff Okudah. Like, what expectation do we have? Or are we going to hide them in zone coverage a whole bunch again and then get shredded up the middle? Yeah, Joe Burrow has a terrible O-line, Daniel Fa. That's kind of the point. Terrible O-line, 45 points a game. He's pretty used to that.
Yeah, it's one of the... I want to kind of jump back to my theory with Turner and Van Ginkel for a second and just at least lay this out, because like last year on 973 snaps, Van Ginkel dropped on the coverage 212 times. Turner on 310 was 55. Grenard on 969 was 94. So while I'm with you on the point that doing so like in severe regularity would be kind of catastrophic from a projection standpoint, like, okay, you just don't think that this guy can ball. So I guess my question for you is, considering Van Ginkel dropped into coverage over 20% of his snaps, do you think that's too high? Or is that just something where when you hear the number, it's like, oh, that just is what it is, but the vibes are different?
I think it's appropriate for both of those guys. I wouldn't want Grenard dropping as much, but Van Ginkel dropping into coverage is a genuine weapon. So you're not hiding him by doing that.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. And because he, threatens as a pass rusher and threatens as a drop off, like if you're going into a Vikings game and this is like Aaron Rodgers didn't do this, and then a bunch of teams after him did, and it like worked, where Aaron Rodgers and the Jets didn't come into a game saying, okay, we got to know where 43 is, and then threw that pick six to him. And then after that, the next like 3 or 4 teams had this very clear, like they absolutely like had an eye on 43 every single play. And if like you're going up against Grenard, you got Harrison Smith back there, Blake Cashman wreaking havoc. There's a lot of dudes on this defense. If your focus has to be on Van Ginkel, everybody else is going to cook really hard. So I think that sounds about, I would be fine with that for both of those guys. And I would expect Dallas Turner's to look similar to Van Ginkel's, and just like having Van Ginkel copy paste, put him on the other side would be pretty fun.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to move to the interior, Luke, because one thing that I've kind of opined about, and I mentioned, I think before you jumped on the show, is my theory is Javon Hargrave is going to be, he might not be a starter for this team, but he's going to be at minimum like a 600 play guy, rotational. Mainly, we just want you to rush the passer kind of guy, because
like
he's 32 years old.
The Tillery role.
I think the Tillery role will probably end up being like Redmond, where Redmond will be your base guy, and then third down packages, you're going to bring in Hargrave and try and get a little bit more juice on the interior. But he's still probably going to play 500-600 snaps, where it's not going to be a limited role. It's going to be, we're going to deploy you when it's smart kind of role, because of his age, because he's had a little bit of an injury history the past couple of years. Try to just use him where he's at his best instead of just using him all the time.
So I don't think I can go as far as that. So like, for that to be true, I think you would have to see like Jalen Redmond listed above him on a depth chart at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that's a spicy one. I don't think I can go down that train with you, but I respect it.
My brain isn't necessarily that Redmond's above him on the depth chart. They're playing different roles and they're being used in different ways to maximize what Hargrave will give you. Because you're giving him essentially 15 million average annual value for 2 years because you believe that he can be a massive impact of rushing the passer. But Redmond gives you something in the run game that he doesn't. He's able to kind of sustain his gaps. He's able to hold on to his blockers and not just get washed out. Yeah. So I guess it's not necessarily about who's starting and who's not. It's about Redmond plays the base downs. Hargrave comes in for the big boy downs.
I could see. So I when it comes to Redmond, I'm going to guess that he's only ever going to rotate in on those base downs. I don't see a lot of Jalen Redmond in like nickel. But I think I'm with you that in nickel or any 4-man front, you would probably have Hargrave be the guy come off, unless it's like 2nd and 15 or something. Then maybe Phillips comes off because he's the least effective in the pass of all three of those guys. Maybe the hot take I'm walking myself into, and I don't think I hate it too much, is that Phillips is the guy that plays less than we think, as more of the like rundown only specialist, because now you don't have to have it. The problem is he's just a really beast of a nose, and has been consistently underrated by this fan base. So I don't know if that'll happen. I think he's too well respected, but and especially in that building. But my thing with Hargrave has been, so Hargrave is a totally different man against a double than against a single. Against a single, he will smoke way better than anybody can play against than many people play against single blocks. And he'll win consistently against single blocks. Against double blocks, he loses, and he loses ugly a lot. So my thing was always that you kind of only would want him in on 5-man surfaces, which is kind of what you're going to do on rundowns. And then he's penetrating, he's getting in the backfield, he's making problems. When it comes to pass downs, you're probably not going to have a lot of 5-man surfaces. So you're going up against doubles in the pass rush a lot. And hey, if you're Javon Hargrave and you eat 2 linemen and everybody else gets to be one-on-one because of you, you'll take that. We're not mad about that, even if you don't get to the quarterback. We'll take that all day. But I would guess that the sort of base neutral downs sort of are what set up the situation where you can get the lowest chance of Javon Hargrave getting double teamed and sledded out, 10 yards. And then when it comes to nickel, especially if it's like 2nd and 6, they're in 11 personnel, you could run, you could pass. That's when I don't want them to be able to just run zone at Hargrave's side and just get a double on him, smoke him, and then get like, that's where I feel like you want to avoid the first downs. So I think those like medium downs are where you wouldn't want him on the field as much, but it also depends on the personnel you're seeing. I think when the offense puts out 11 personnel, we're not seeing Redmond or Hargrave. If you ask me, I think we're just talking about versus like bigger offensive packages.
One thing that I'm really curious about, and then I want to move on to the secondary before we get out of here. What do the Vikings do on this defensive front when it comes to the depth? I don't think anybody's
tough one.
I don't think anybody's locked in after the top 3 and also Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. I think he would need to have a Willie Beavers type camp to get cut. That's my read.
It already probably hasn't happened. I think he's already done enough in the spring. Yeah. Because they had him rotate in a lot with like the ones and stuff, and they were actually like really. I think they were just feeling out what he could do. It's also the trenches in spring. It's shorts, so you can't do that. But yeah, it's choose 2 of Taki Taimani, Jalen Redmond, and Levi Drake Rodriguez, and I think I don't think people are going to like the answer.
I think Redmond would need to have a really bad camp to not make the team. I think he did enough last year to show, hey, I'm worth keeping around because I can do a bunch of different things. And he ended up earning a starting spot for a short time at the end of the year. But my curiosity is going to be Levi Drake Rodriguez and Taki Taimani, because theoretically Drake Rodriguez has a pass rush upside. Taki Taimani is just a run stuff he knows, but he's very good at it. So I've always felt that they're going to move Rodriguez inside a little bit more and want him to play more of a 0-1 technique kind of role. And I think that has started to manifest a little bit. But the idea is he can be a good pass rusher, but will we ever see anything from him? And I think that's kind of where your decision lies on who you think is going to get the boot.
Yeah, I don't think we need to like white knuckle hold tight to our 7th round pick from last year. That's how a lot of 7th rounders go. It's fine.
But he was prospect X.
He was, yeah. Small school guy. If I remember preseason last year, like Taki and Jalen Redmond went absolutely nuts. They were like, you cannot justifiably keep this guy off the field. He's playing so well. And Levi Drake Rodriguez, I thought, had a fine preseason, but he was never going to beat those two guys out. If we get to this preseason, I kind of feel like they have to do it again. If you're going to have those guys on the field against everybody's twos, they kind of have to cook again. And if they just look like, all right, whatever, and they're just coasting off of what they did last year, then there's every room in the world for Levi Drake to come and, knock one of those guys off. I think I'm with you that like Jalen Redmond is proven enough, but not so much that like he can just sort of coast this preseason. It's just enough where we can trust that he's going to do it again. Like with Taki, he played well, and he played well in the regular season too. Like he was a real player that can hang with, NFL starters. And that sort of most of the time will take you out of the preseason conversation. And I think that there was a good reason that he was the guy starting in the first place before he got hurt, but coming off an injury and, maybe you don't have the same mojo, anything can happen. I think it's a more straight up battle though than you do. I think it is just who plays best. And we have pretty good reasons to predict that Redmond and Taimani will play better than Levi Drake Rodriguez, because that's what we saw before. But if that happens, if Levi Drake Rodriguez is the best of those three, one of those other two guys is getting cut. Like, I don't think they've quite earned the sort of anointment that, somebody like a fresh draft pick, like Tiernan Ingram-Dawkins will get, who can be worse than all three of those guys, but still make the team because he just got drafted.
So last question on the trenches, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot. Do you think there's any chance, because of the flexibility that Ingram-Dawkins gives you, that instead of keeping 5 and 6, they keep 4 edge rushers and 7 defensive linemen if all of these guys just show that, hey, I'm worth keeping on this team because Ingram-Dawkins can kick outside and do some of that edge rush stuff, especially on base downs. He would theoretically, he'd be a great run defender.
Yeah, best 9 players, right? Yeah, for sure. So who would the edges be? It would be your main 3 guys, and then Ingram-Dawkins himself. Are you counting him as an edge?
I'm counting him as a D tackle. So last year they kept 5 edges and 6 defensive linemen out of camp. So
and they didn't really replace a bunch of those edges. So I kind of do think that like those 3 like true outside linebackers and like a Gabe Murphy or something, but like there's nothing. There's nothing. Or a Bo Richter. Yeah. Like that feels way easier to just like lose both of those guys and keep Ingram-Dawkins and call him the quote unquote third outside linebacker. However, if it were me, I would never actually play Ingram-Dawkins that way. I don't want him to back off into coverage. I don't think that that's his game, has been his game at all. And I think him as an edge rusher bending around the corner, genuinely dreadful. I think that was horrible. He couldn't bend. He couldn't get around. He was slow. He wasn't strong. He would get kicked out of the club constantly out the edge. You get into the inside, you just try to shoot a gap, get the half man, open a guy up and try to get in there. Then we're cooking. Then we got a draft pick. One of my like Locked On Vikings hot takes is that I don't know if this guy is a flexible piece. I think he has to be a defensive tackle unless you just want to throw him to the wolves on half of his downs and have him suck. But I don't think you want to like do that. It's his pass rush around the edges is not NFL caliber.
My thinking is more of a play contain on the outside kind of role where you're not asking him to bend the arc, because I don't think he can do it either. But if you have him like line up at a 7 tech where you're outside the tackle, but you're setting the edge, you're holding up at the point of attack so other guys can come in and make those kind of plays. I think that you could do some of that, but I also think because of that limitation, it would allow defenses or offenses to try and scheme away from you, which in itself is a problem. I think his performance this preseason is going to be really, really interesting, because if he plays really, really well, that's a weapon that Brian Flores can use, because like we talk about how 5 stars don't matter. 5 stars matter to NFL teams. Like they love drafting 5
That's
stars.
not really what Like once you play 2 snaps in a preseason and all of your stock like ceases to matter at all. Once they actually see you like from a sideline, then that's all that's going to determine what they do with you. I wouldn't be surprised, like if I were the Vikings and I hold the take that I have on Tyrann Ingram-Dawkins, which is that he's way better inside than he is outside. I would still play him outside in the preseason and like just stress test it, see what you like, but then maybe not do it so much. I wanted to answer this. Somebody in the chat asked what is behind me, the Vikings flyer. So I am not at home. I am I'm visiting my parents. So this is my stepdad's workspace. My stepdad is an architect. He actually designed Winter Park way back in the day. So there's some posters and a whole bunch of other gifts and stuff back here that are he knew the Vikings back then. He was close with them. So yeah, pretty cool stuff.
That is really cool. Last question before I let you go, Luke, because you'll be seeing enough of me this week. My biggest curiosity of this whole thing, and it's something that I've been kind of putting around in my head, is if they're actually just going to one-to-one replace Cam Bynum with Theo Jackson. And I've gotten the sense from Flores that it could be yes, it could be no. Listening to him talk, kind of like Theo Jackson's been a standout in training camp the last 2 years. And him playing less than 100 defensive snaps last year felt a little odd, but Flores, also as much as we think he should rotate, doesn't do a lot of rotation.
Yeah, like who are you pulling off the field last year? Like, are you taking Harrison Smith off the field so you can give Theo Jackson a run? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and that was one of my big arguments with Turner. I'm like, are you taking second-team All-Pro Van Ginkel and almost second-team All-Pro Grenard off the field? No, you're not. But what do you think about Theo Jackson? Is it just going to be a 1-1 Cam Bynum replacement? Or did Flores just use Cam Bynum because he had him, and now that he has Theo Jackson, which is a slightly different package, they're going to create all kinds of new stuff that they want to do on the back end with those 3 guys?
So I think I've been thinking about this too. I think it's a snap count question. I think role-wise, yes. I think Theo Jackson just plays what Cam Bynum played. You're going to do a lot of half. You're going to do a lot of deep third. You're going to do maybe a little bit of man on a tight end if it comes to that. But like for the most part, he's going to be off the ball, backing into coverage, trying to make plays on the ball like Cam Bynum was. And that's a smarts question. I think Cam Bynum was always a really smart safety and as many plays just like on the film study of it as he did on the Athletic. And Theo Jackson's going to have to be the same way, because I think it's a pretty cerebral spot to actually be productive and not just back off so much that you're like back yourself out of the play, which I think he did a little bit more as a younger player. Like in his rookie year, when he had those snaps, he would back up super far and overdo it, right? Like there's safe, and then there's this is a 10-man defense. So Theo Jackson's going to have to do that and have the confidence. And it's going to be, I think, a lot more about mentally than physically for him. But that's going to be the role. And the question to me is, so let's say you are you see a 21 personnel setup. So you can't have 3 safeties on the field. You got to have your base defense in 4 defensive backs. Who is coming off the field? You're not taking Murphy off the field. You're not going to just have 1 corner. So you'll have 2 corners at least. You're going to have Harrison Smith and Josh Metellus on the field, right? If it's a true 1-for-1 for Cam Bynum, then it would be Metellus coming off and Theo Jackson stays on. So if you ever see that, then whoa, they're into this guy. They really think he's a good dude. But I wouldn't be shocked to see it where Metellus stays, and then Metellus does the Cam Bynum part of that particular play, and you give Theo Jackson the breather. Or maybe you give Harrison Smith the breather if you just want him to get his old man timeout.
And that's really interesting, because they've talked about giving Harrison Smith the old man timeout for years. And
surely one of these days it'll happen.
Yeah, they straight up said, Kevin O'Connell, I think, was the one that said, it's like, you want to take Smith off the field? He won't come off. It was,
yeah, true. You got to, yeah, he's going to tell you no.
Yeah. My intrigue here is Metellus. I love Metellus. I think he's a brilliant mind. I think his versatility, which is going to make him incredibly difficult to pay, because how do you quantify what he does as far as an NFL contract? That to me is going to be really, really interesting whenever that gets done. But do you trust him to just do the Cam Bynum stuff and just go play a deep half or a deep middle? I don't know.
That'll be the role. That'll be what he does when he's on the field. And it's a matter of, or with Metellus. Yeah. Oh, I absolutely trust that. Yeah, for sure. I think he'd back off, hit a landmark, make a play on the ball. Perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay. I just have missed it. I haven't seen him do a lot of the more traditional stuff. He's doing a lot of more of the funky stuff. So I'll trust your brain on that because I need to watch a bunch more defensive tape over the next couple weeks before we get into training camp. But
there was, I believe, 2023.
Are you talking the Jordan Love interception? This is where the funky stuff comes in because he dropped in a Tampa 2 after lining up in the A gap. So
right. So if you can drop from the A gap to there, I feel perfectly fine putting you on the hash and having you drop from there too and hitting the landmark. And relating to the ball and relating to the routes and all that stuff that a DB classically does. I don't have any trouble with that versus the role that he usually has, which usually does have him dropping into the half all the time and rotating all the time. Like, the versatility stuff doesn't mean he's just playing stuff that a safety would usually play. It means he's playing everything. I am perfectly comfortable with him doing that role, much more comfortable than I am with Theo Jackson doing it because he has proven way more than Theo Jackson. But the way they're talking about him in the building, that kind of sounds like maybe I'm wrong about that. And, and they're just going to say, wait and see. And by week 1, I'm going to go, oh, whoa, he can play the role. Okay, now I get it.
What's really interesting is he also got the Josh Metellus contract where they're prepaying him before he's done anything. So I'm going to be very intrigued.
Yeah.
Luke, we got one question for you before we go. Grandizer 12 wants to know who your darling in camp is going to be. The one guy flying under the radar who you just like.
Man, we usually do this at camp. Like we would sit there in the bleachers and be like, oh, look at what was the one receiver that had a cup of coffee with the Vikings that looked really cool in his one-on-one drills. And we were like, ooh, and he went nowhere. You remember that guy? You know what I'm talking about?
I for some reason, I want to say it was Brandon Powell. That dude was just ripping everybody.
Brandon Powell looked great. You could tell right away that he was going to be helpful. But no, it was a guy, he joined in the middle of camp. It was like he joined the same time N'Keal Harry joined.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember this?
I do remember it. I don't remember the guy though. I feel like it was a vet, wasn't it?
It was total random nobody. He was like a second-year player, never made a team, and we were like, look at that guy. But that's usually how it would happen. Is like we would sit there in the bleachers, and then we would kind of fall in love with someone. But I won't be at camp, so I'll have to kind of make the choice to fall in love with someone. Probably the first preseason game will be when I really get this. But for now, I you know what? I haven't just fallen for like AJ Rose style running back hype in some time. So how about Trey Stewart? Give me the Jacksonville State, running back.
God, I love.
He'll rip off some random long run against somebody's fourth team and get all hype. I'm just going to fall right into it. Reckless abandon.
So the guy, and the reason why we were talking about him so much in the bleachers was Jacob Copeland.
Yes,
the Maryland kid who played at Florida. I loved him in college.
Oh, he was a Florida guy. That's why you were into it. I just thought he looked cool. He literally just like ran crispy like warm up routes. Like he had a quick looking whip route, and I was like, yeah. Hey, and I brought that up in a football party to Ron Johnson, and Ron was like, okay, you have to calm down about the whip routes.
I always try to be calm about the Florida guys, because you can get a little bit of an inherent bias. I'm gonna throw one name at you, and then we're gonna call it a night. I like the idea of Elijah Williams, but I also have no idea how insane FCS HBCU production is going to translate into the NFL. But the one link that I have that could be really, really interesting is he played in the same conference that Javon Hargrave did. And Hargrave was obviously a 3rd round pick and weighed like 30 pounds more, but athletic profile wise, other than weight, they're eerily similar. So I'm wondering if they saw him in rookie minicamp and be like, hey, I wonder if this can be a guy that we can mold to maybe be something sometime. Because when you produce at any level in college football, it means something.
You're
but
doing something right,
how much does it mean in the FCS? That's going to be really interesting because it could mean, hey, this dude's just really good and never really got taken seriously because FCS. Or it could mean nothing because it's FCS. He's a guy I want to watch. I want to see what he can do because he had multiple sack seasons of 33 in his college career. And I think he's a really interesting case.
I think it was Arif that did the study on these like rookie minicamp guys, and they have like 4 times as much they're like 4 times as likely to make the team as a regular undrafted rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically because, you didn't consider them and something happened in rookie minicamp while they were in front of you to change your mind. That has to be a fairly significant something. Whatever you saw has to be pretty apparent and pretty intense. So, I mean, you could go through the list of CJ Ham, Adam Thielen, Chad Beebe was another one. There was one more recent, but I can't remember who it was. But like those guys do happen a good amount. So that rookie minicamp guy is always an interesting. It's always a decent pick if you want to find like the dark horse to make the 53.
Yeah, I think I might do my Mr. Mankato power rankings here coming up, just because there's nothing to talk about.
You mind if I steal that?
I think it'll be a lot of fun. Go ahead, just do it after Thursday.
That's for Locked On. That's a good one.
Because we're gonna do it on Thursday. Dave, any questions for Luke before we head out tonight?
I was just curious, when we got talking about Metellus, is he going to have more snaps this year or less snaps this year? And it obviously is based on Theo Jackson, I would think.
So I guess there's 2 scenarios. One is where he's every single rep and he plays every rep and he just moves around and does different things, whether you're in base or in nickel. If Theo Jackson is the guy that stays in base like Cam Bynum was, then I would say it'll be about the same. And it depends, game to game on how much 11 or 12 personnel people are bringing. But I think if you want to average those out, then I guess that makes the safe bet more.
Cool. And Daniel says it well, Mr. Bushlight Camp Player of the Week. Player of the day. Yes. I'm hoping to be at camp all 12 days. I'm also trying to talk my bosses into paying for it. So that'll make things a little nicer. Luke, I appreciate you taking some time out of your vacation to join. What do you got cooking on Locked On Vikings that everybody can kind of watch for over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah. Well, so I will be doing Locked On Vikings from here this week. And I didn't get one up. There was a travel day yesterday, so there wasn't one up today, but there will be one up tomorrow. And then next week I will be off the grid. I will have fled to the woods, and I've got some pre-recorded ones that are going to go up that are some sort of, call them like deleted scenes a little bit from history doc that I did a couple years ago that are like things I didn't really get to explore as much as I wanted to. Stuff about the feud over who decided that the Vikings were purple, a big long deep dive into the circumstances surrounding, and you're like, this Tyler, the 1997 wild card game, a list of Mike Lynn's sins beyond the Herschel Walker trade. He did so much more to hurt the Vikings than that. And the episode will just be called The Worst Thing to Ever Happen to the Minnesota Vikings. And so on. Yeah, it'll be a week of history stuff. And then I'll be back on the Monday, the 20th or whatever that Monday is, with some regular stuff. And camp will be starting up like kind of right around then. So we'll be in it.
God, I can't wait for that game about the wild card 97. Arguably the most pivotal Vikings game to happen over the course of the last 30 years for this franchise.
The title is the scheduled title is the most important game the Vikings ever played. That's because I think if they lose that one, then Denny Green gets fired and they move to Birmingham.
Yeah,
I'm not kidding. Like no Red McCombs and they move to Birmingham,
and they don't get Randy Moss.
Yeah, who knows what happens?
It all links.
Yeah, they would draft somebody that year, but like they probably would not have remained the Minnesota Vikings. Like it was that bad.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear your take on everything. So thank you, Luke. Thank you everybody for joining us. You know what? If somebody can hook me up with somebody who works with Busch Light, we will do a Busch Light camp player of the day. I think that absolutely rips. Everybody knows I love Busch Light. But for Dave, for Luke, I'm Tyler. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back on Thursday. SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!